Afternoon peeps, how are we all doing? Well, I hope. So, I'm heading out for a little bit of a plod. I've got one of these new selfie sticks that my mate Keith uses. It's supposed to make things easier, but we'll see how it goes. So, the last video I did was dedicated to Roberta and Ken. Yeah, like I say, Roberta suffered a stroke. So I know where she's coming from. I know about the fatigue and everything, but what I'm doing today is just a nice gentle little plod out, just to clear my lungs and everything and clear my head. So I spoke to you before about when I first joined the army and I went out to Tidworth for my first posting, 66 Squadron RCT workshops. We then obviously did a couple of exercises in Germany. Funny enough, I saw a video on YouTube the other day about the Saxon. Well, the Saxon, we took that out of Germany on an exercise back in the 70s. And at that time it didn't have the name Saxon, it was just known as the AT105. Primarily designed to go into Northern Ireland. Someone decided it looked a bit too aggressive for Northern Ireland. Bit of a joke really, but great for urban, totally useless for cross country, as we found out when we got to Saltaire training area. It was constantly breaking down. So I've seen some comments from guys that got involved with Saxon later on, and they virtually said exactly the same as me. The fact was, it was a piece of crap, which the MOD tends to do on a regular basis. So I hear about the Ajax at the moment, another piece of equipment that has just gone through nothing but troubles. SA80, nothing but troubles. Why is it? We always get things wrong. Anyway, so I got posted from Tidworth to the Royal Scotch Dragoon Guards, who are based at Athlone Barracks in Paderborn, or sorry, Senlager. So first day in, it wasn't long before the Falklands kicked off, funnily enough. I got posted there late February. Funnily enough, it was on my ex-wife's birthday, 24th of February 1982. So I turned up at Athlone Barracks. They were a cavalry unit, yeah, that were equipped. This selfie stick's giving me nothing but grief. But they were a cavalry unit equipped with the Chieftain tank. Now I got posted there, and Chieftain was going through a refurbishment for a thing called the IFCS, or Improved Fire Control System. So it had been moved from what they used to class as steam gunnery, and we now suddenly had this wonderful technological system. The computer for the IFCS used to sit under the gunner's seat. It was a bugger to get out of the tank, I know that, but bear with me peeps, I'm having problems with this selfie stick. Technology, great when it works. Yeah, like I say, technology, it's great when it works, isn't it? Absolutely marvellous. But yeah, so it was moving on to IFCS. When I got posted there, again, it was a case of vehicle electricians were sort of being phased out of being in cavalry and tank regiments because of IFCS, and it was moving over to being looked after by the control equipment technicians, or those of you that know the REME, known as ECIs. They deal with all the electronics on the tanks. So initially I was posted into B Squadron, fitter section. Did some work with it, working in the electronics section. Really enjoyed it. it was a case of, it was a new piece of equipment that I could get my teeth into. And if any of you know me, you know I like to delve into new equipment. But like I say, the vehicle electrician was being phased out of working with the fit sections in cavalry regiments and tank regiments. So I was then moved into the B vehicle shop to work primarily on Bedfords, Land Rovers and so on. And after coming from a Royal Corps Transport Regiment, it was a bit boring, to be honest. But then they decided what we would do is we would have a sort of A vehicle area within the LAD. So things like 432s and everything, the Eckies could get on and work on the tanks with the improved fire control system, and the electricians and the vehicle AMEX would then deal with things like the 432s, scimitars, scorpions and so on. Which again, I was looking forward to that, because I hadn't touched the 432 from the time that I did my basic trade training back in Borden. So started dealing with that, and one of the things that Scotch Lagoon Guards had was 2 manned target tanks. Now what these were 2 up-armoured Centurion tanks that had all the gunnery stripped out and everything like that, totally gutted, but they were double skinned down armoured. And what the crew used to do was drive around mainly at Senlager. We also did it at a place called Putlos, where they used to hold the Milan concentrations, and they would drive around and get shot at by the infantry with small arms fire and with the Milan. Now the Milan training missile had a chalk head on it, so these things would drive around and get shot at. And I volunteered one day to go out with the crew just to see what it was all about, and it was quite funny because when the Milan hit the tank, it was like someone had hit it with a sledgehammer on the side of the tank. It did rock it slightly, but we were safe inside. During one of the times out in Senlager, it was a baking hot day, and the crew, the tank commander, suddenly was sat on the seat and suddenly virtually backflipped back off the seat and onto the floor. And I looked at him and said, "What's that?" He said, "Have a look in the sight." And when I looked in the sight, there was a 7.62 round looking back at me. Now on the tank, there were various areas that were painted red, and that was a case of you were not allowed to engage in those areas. Well, you never ever challenge a squaddy not to engage something, do you? So sure enough, they decided to shoot at the sighting systems. And like I say, in the perspex, there was this 7.62 round. Once I got involved in that, my boss, the sergeant in charge, decided that it'd be a good idea for me to go away and do a Centurion equipment course, because one of the things is obviously when these things are out on the ranges and so on, we need support for them. Now I worked with a civilian bloke called Ron Bridgewater. Never forget Ron, cracking bloke. What I will do is I'll post some pictures of us with a target tank. What Ron didn't know about the Centurion tank, what wasn't worth knowing about. And if you didn't know, the Centurion tank actually had the same engine as what was fitted in the Spitfire. Now there was no distributor or anything like that. The thing was all fired up via magnetos, and the only way to actually get to the magnetos was to actually hang upside down, and work on them. Well, with me only being 5 foot odd at the time. I was ideal for the job. And I enjoyed it, working on those target tanks. Like I say, we went up to Patlos, which was near the Danish border for the Milan concentration, but primarily we were actually working around Senlager for when the infantry regiments came through to do their annual firing. Like I say, they were starting to phase out the vehicle electrician role within cavalry and tank regiments at the time, and I only spent about a year with the Scotch Dragoon Guards. Now, one of the things about the Scotch Dragoon Guards, they were an amalgamation of the Royal Scots Greys and the Welsh Carabineers. And if you didn't know, the band of the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards had a number 1 in 1971, I believe it was, with the tune Amazing Grace. And Lisa will tell you, whenever I hear Amazing Grace now, yeah, I have to turn it off. Main reason being, the Regimental Sergeant Major, when I was attached to the RSDG, apparently was the lone piper on Amazing Grace. And whenever we used to have a mess do, some prat would get out a set of bagpipes and say to him, "Can you play Amazing Grace, please, sir?" And of course he did. But I got sick and tired of listening to the bloody thing. So, like I say now, I can't listen to that tune anymore without asking the wife to turn it off. Good afternoon, how you doing?
Afternoon. Nice.
But yeah, so I then got posted from the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards. My initial posting order was for me to go to the Irish Guards in Munster. Now, we're talking sort of early 80s, and this was in the days when you would never have seen a coloured person on outside Backhouse. You would never have seen a coloured person from the lifeguards or Blues and Royals sitting on a horse outside Backhouse. So I went to the Irish Guards prior to my posting to just go and visit and meet up with the ASM, the Artificer Sergeant Major. I walked into his office and his immediate reaction was, "Corporal Clark, I think we've got a problem." So I sat with him and we were discussing it, because I knew about the problems with coloured people within various regiments in the British Army. And not long after that, there was a knock on the door, and in walked the Regimental Sergeant Major of the Irish Guards. So I introduced myself to him. We had a quick chat. He said to me, "Very nice to meet you, Corporal Clark," and walked out. And the ASM explained to me, he said, "You won't be posted here, son." I said, "Oh, right, okay, sir." He said, "No," he said, "the RSM's offered to go and see the Colonel. The Colonel will be in touch with Read Me Man and Records," he said, "your posting will be changed." And sure enough, it was. But the only problem was, they threw me from the frying pan to the fire. And my posting was changed, and I was sent to the 1st Battalion of the Black Watch Royal Highland Regiment in a little village called Werl, not far from Soest in Germany. So I tips up in Werl. Now, at the time, the Black Watch were actually on exercise up in Saltau. So I managed to get in prior to them coming back. So I snuck in the back door. When they came back from Saltau, I was then told that I had to go over and meet the Regimental Sergeant Major, which, if anyone knows Albahira Barracks in Werl, you'll know it's a split camp. Yeah, the vehicles and the workshops was on one side of the road, about a quarter of a mile down from where the main barracks were. So I went up, met up with the Regimental Sergeant Major, a bloke called Chopper Proctor. Nice person, as such. And his initial reaction was, "Who are you then?" So I said to him, "Oh, my name's Corporal Clark, sir." He said, "Oh, so you're the new Remy Clark?" And I said to him, "No sir, I'm the new Remy electrician." I said, "My name's Clark." "Right, okay, so where is it you've come from?" So I said to him, "I've just come from the Royal Scottish Dragoon Guard, sir." And he said to me, "No, I mean, where do you come from?" So I looked at him, I said, "I'm from Portsmouth, sir." And he looked at me again and said, "Call Clark, I need to know where you've come from." So I looked him square in the eye and I said to him, "I think the answer you're after, sir, is my mum is from a little island called St Helena and my dad is from Aldershot." And he said to me, "So you're St Helenian?" And I said to him, "No sir, I'm a Pomponian, I was born in Portsmouth." So this is the real hilarious part of it. He turned around and said to me, "You're very outspoken, aren't you?" "I do." He said, "You're very outspoken, aren't you, Corporal?" I said, "Sir, you asked me a question, I've given you the answer." He said to me, "I like you, Corporal Clark." He said, "I'm going to allow you to stay with the 1st Battalion in the Black Watch Royal Highland Regiment." Now, it turns out that prior to me turning up, there'd been a cook from the Army Catering Corps that had turned up a couple of weeks beforehand. He got as far as the front gate and then sent back to his unit in Zoast. But what Mr. Proctor didn't tell me was that he was only the RSM again of the battalion for about the next 6 months. It was then taken over by the next RSM, who his nickname was Starchy Smith. So the next 17 months of my posting, good afternoon.
Hi.
The next 17 months of my posting with the Black Watch was horrendous because Starchy Smith, just to put it bluntly, was a complete and utter racist. Those of us that have done guard duties and everything, you'll remember the guard reports and the occurrence book. Now, I used to have to go on what they used to call Tara's Parade. Within the Scottish regiments, the RSM is known as the Tara. And I tipped up because I was a full corporal doing guard duties, stood in his office and he read me the guard report, word for word, comma, full stop, the works. And I used to have to read bits back to him. And if I got anything wrong or if I abbreviated anything, yeah, I was then marched off to jail. Yeah, now I was the corporal that was supposed to be on the guard commander for the guard that evening. And I would end up in jail until I was released. Like I say, 17 months I put up with that. And even to this day, if I was ever to meet Starchy Smith out in the street, I'd probably floor him because he just made my life hell for no reason whatsoever. The guys within the Black Watch, some of them accepted the fact that I was there, others didn't. I remembered when I'd been with the Royal Scottish Dragoon Guards battle group, part of the battle group was the Black Watch, and I'd gone to a 432 to help look at it because it had broken down. And the driver turned around and told me that he wasn't allowing me on his vehicle. How do you, mate? Of course, when I got posted there, that said person looked at me and couldn't believe it. This is the bloke that I've refused on the vehicle. So initially I started off in the B vehicle shop, again working on Bedfords, Land Rovers, Stalwarts. But then I was moved to Fire Support Company Fitter Section. Now, Fire Support Company incorporated a reconnaissance platoon, mortar platoon and the Milan platoon. Yeah, and obviously the company headquarters itself. So now I'm starting to work back with 432s, scimitars, various other CVRT variants such as the Sultans, and I was enjoying it. The staff sergeant that was in charge of fire support company fitter section was a bloke called Mick Helliwell. He was what we call an artisan staff sergeant. He wasn't one of these fast track people which we know as tiffies. Mick had worked his way up through the ranks, vehicle mechanic, but there was just one problem. Mick was a raging alcoholic, and as part of fire support company, he was deemed as being unfit for deployment on exercises. The officer commanding of the Black Watch at the time was a person called John Kosh. Got the greatest respect for John, and if you ever see this John, you'll remember many a day out in Canada and so on. But I was called in by the OC and asked if I would be willing to accept the role of fitter section commander when it came to exercises, which I duly accepted. It was another role that I thought, yeah, I can fill this, another challenge, I can get on and do this, no problems whatsoever. So whenever we deployed anywhere, Saltau, we did a couple of medmans out in Canada, Milan concentration in Putlos, mortar concentration in Münsterlager. I was in charge of the fitter section. I did that for the next 2 years. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And we then had a Lance Corporal vehicle mechanic posted in, a bloke called Al Preston. And Al complained about the fact that he thought it should be a vehicle mechanic in charge of the fitter section, not a vehicle electrician. So I got called into the OC's office and asked, would I mind stepping down? And as I said to the OC, doesn't bother me at all, boss. I'll do whatever you want me to do. And I sit down and allowed Al Preston, as a Lance Corporal vehicle mechanic, to then take control of the fitter section. Now, while I was in control of the fitter section, I had a 432 and a 434 and a Samson CVRT. The crew on the Samson was Cy Butler and Ron Hall. Ron Hall was probably one of the tallest Gurkha looking people that I've ever seen in my life, and how the hell he fitted into that Samson I'll never know. But we had a good crew. Like I say, we deployed out to Canada on exercise medman on a few occasions. On the third medman that we did, Ron had been posted. He was the driver of the Samson, and a bloke called Dave Pickford was then posted in and took over Ron's role. Now, fun little story about it in Canada. We were on Medman 4, and if any of you have been on Medman before, Medman 4, middle of July, it's absolutely baking out on the prairie. So I'm there with my 434, the Samson's there, we're repairing a Spartan, and the next thing I turn around and Dave Pickford's lying on the floor. Like I say, it was a baking hot exercise and we were taking a lot of water. But there he is lying on the deck. And I just looked at him, checked him over, made sure he was okay. We then radioed through for a Casevac. Now I thought he'd gone down with a heat exhaustion or something like that. He got taken away to the hospital in Medicine Hat, and 2 days later I had to go and visit him, make sure he was okay. So of course I turned out and said to me, Daft Git, what did I tell you about making sure that you're hydrated? He looked at me, what are you on about hydrated? I said, you collapsed due to dehydration. He said, no, what it was, the louvers of the vehicle that he was working on came down and knocked him on the head. So I remember the fact that when we brought the helicopter in to Casevac him out, it was a nurse that got flown out to come and treat him, and when he was put on the stretcher and taken into the helicopter, he looked at me and went, Nobby, it's a woman. I thought it was just being delirious. So like I say, I spent time, the Black Watch left and the Royal Scots took over. Now the Royal Scots were a totally different kettle of fish. Yeah, the Royal Scots, I would serve with them again tomorrow. Yeah, and it's ironic that when I went out to the Gulf War in '91, the Royal Scots were there. I met up with the guys from Fire Support Company in Blackadder Lines, and it was Hogmanay. And Dykes McKinnon, who was the colour sergeant in charge of Milan platoon, said to me, "What are you doing tonight, Nobs?" I said, "Well, I'm going off to my bed." He said, "But it's Hogmanay." I said, "Yeah, it might be Hogmanay, but we're in the middle of Saudi Arabia." He said, "Come with me." Took me into the tent in Blackadder Lines and kicked open a chest, and there was bottles of whiskey. Guess what I did on Hogmanay 1990? Yeah, following morning, early hours following morning, I went back to my tent, and the ASM bloke called Trevor Rochester looked at me and said to me, "You been drinking?" I said to him, "Yes, I have." "Where you been drinking?" So I told him, like I say, it was the guys from the Royal Scots. Those guys did me the greatest honour when I left them. Would have been, what, 87? He's 87, 88. In the fact that the colour sergeant who was in charge of the reconnaissance platoon had actually been my training corporal at the depot in Arborfield back in 1978. He transferred from the REME over to the Royal Scots, and when I came to leave the Royal Scots, he got the company to transport me around Albahira Barracks, going in and out of every single office, including the colonels, yeah, to say goodbye. So yeah, the Royal Scots, brilliant bunch of guys. Germany as a whole, yeah, absolutely fantastic. Anyone that served out in BAOR, exercises, we used to tear the place up. There's no two ways about it. We were given what are called barn money, yeah, and we'd speak with a farmer, yeah, and we'd probably leaguer up in one of his barns. There was times with the exercise damage. I know when I was attached to the Scotch Dragoon Guards, I got told by the Regiment Corporal, who was in charge of the ARV, I was driving it, to make a sharp left turn as we came out of a barn. And I said to Robbo, "If I make a sharp left turn, I'm going to damage the barn. Just do as you're told." And sure enough, I left sticked, took out the door of the barn, and then Robbo jumped off and signed a document for the farmer to get a new barn built because we'd damaged it. But we used to tear up the fields. A lot of the time it was the farmers would agree to it due to the fact they might have had a bad harvest or something. The people of Germany, absolutely wonderful. My first night in Germany, I went downtown with the boys and I was practicing to ask for Bratty and chips, yeah, in German. So, eine Bratwurst and Pommes mit Mehl bitte. I got taken to Pink Snelly. If any of you have been to Senlager, you'll know Pink Snelly very well. And I walked in, said to the girl behind the counter, "Eine Bratwurst and Pommes mit Mehl bitte." And she looked at me with a broad Cockney accent and said, "Do you want to eat it here, love, or take it home?" But the first couple of months in Germany, I was introduced to all the, what they call Schützenfests. In Senlager, they had a Schützenfest on, not long after I'd been posted there. And I walked into a tent and a German civilian that had never met me before in his life suddenly grabbed hold of me, welcomed me to the Schützenfest and went and bought me a beer. In Paderborn, they used to close Paderborn off for a week. Basically, it was a big party. And there was a fountain in the middle of Paderborn, and what they used to do was empty the fountain of of water, fill it full of beer. You would then go to a little stall and you would buy a stein. And I remember, never forget it, it used to cost 4 Deutschmarks, which at the time was £1. And you just sit by the fountain and drink. Yeah, just keep dipping your stein into the fountain and get your beer. But Germany, absolutely fantastic. The people, wonderful. The countryside, beautiful. Cleanliness, this country could learn a lot from the German people. Hell of a lot. Yeah. Things such as, people are going out on a Sunday on their bikes. There was nothing open on a Sunday. Sunday was a day of rest, for the time for the family. And you'd all be out there on your push bikes. We used to go down, because where Verl wasn't far from the Mona Dam, which, if you know about the dam buses, it's one of the dams that they breached. You weren't allowed to wash your car out on the street on a Sunday, you get fined. You weren't allowed to hang your washing out on a Sunday, you get fined. During the winter, it was your job to clear the path outside your house. Yeah, again, if you didn't do it, you got fined. Simple things such as speeding fines. Speeding fines were dealt with on the spot. Yeah, if you got caught by the German civil police, they'd wave you over, and you had to carry a minimum of 50 Deutschmarks with you at all times. And if you got fined, you'd pay your fine. He would then give you a receipt and you'd be on your way. The first time that I left Germany, I was due to leave that morning to get the ferry back to the UK. I'd been posted back to Catterick, and there was a note on my door, and it was from the chief clerk, and it was bring in 60 Deutschmarks for some incriminating photographs. Well, you can imagine my wife, now ex-wife, went ballistic. She thought, oh yeah, what's this incriminating? So I went and saw Bill Warwick, who was our chief clerk, and I said to him, give us the photographs. He said, no, you give me the 60 Deutschmarks and I'll give you the photographs. So I told him, stop mucking around and give me the photographs. He gave me the photographs, and what it was a picture of me going down the B1 past a place called Bielefeld. And there was no denying it was me driving, because unlike here where they just take a photograph of your number plate, there was a picture. The number plate was highlighted, bright as a button. I'm sat in the driver's seat driving the car, my wife's alongside me, and it was so clear you could see my daughter sitting in the back seat. And what Bill Warwick wanted was the 60 marks to go down to the bank to pay the fine, because he knew full well that I was heading off towards Calais that day to come back to the UK. But like I say, Germany, what a wonderful place. My last time there would have been 1997, when I got posted back to Marchwood for my final posting. I will go back there tomorrow. The banking system, absolutely fantastic. Everyone goes on about the Berlin Wall. I must admit, where I was in Paderborn at the time when the wall came down, none of the West German people were celebrating, because they knew what was going to happen, because the German economy was such a strong economy, and they knew that all these East Germans coming over would bring down the economy, and sure enough it did. My German is what I call Pidgin German, and the reason I say that, my wife used to work at the military school in Detmold, and one of the workers there was a lovely lady called Marta. And Marta made the most wonderful donuts you will ever come across. And her husband Heinrich, I eventually met him, he couldn't speak English, and at the time my German was very poor. But Heinrich was into pigeon racing, and he took me to his pigeon club, and I met the guys in the pigeon club in Detmold, and first thing he did was taught me all the swear words, which yeah, it used to be the thing. Yeah, but my German picked up from there where I could actually hold a conversation. Not fluently, but enough to get me by. And that is why when I was out in Germany, I always used to try and speak German to the German people. Now, you would normally find that if you were struggling, that the German people would actually come back to you and speak to you in English, because they used to love practicing their English. Yeah, but like I say, Germany, absolutely fantastic posting. I spent a couple of times in Germany, jumping back between Germany and the UK. After I'd finished with the Royal Scots, I was posted up to northern Germany to 3-2 Armoured Engineers in a place called Münsterlager, which is where we used to hold the mortar concentrations. Yeah, but 3-2 Armoured Engineers, or 3-2 Armoured Farmers as everyone called them, were in Dennis Barracks in Münsterlager. So I'm going to stop the video there. So you've learned about the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards, the Black Watch, yeah, and the Royal Scots. What I will do on the next video, I'll talk to you about my time with 3-2 Armoured Engineers, which at the time that I joined them, they were just starting to be issued with the Chieftain bridge layers. Now that had been designed by a Royal Engineer officer, and myself and the metalsmith and the vehicle mechanics were actually actively involved in the design of the AVLAB, as we called it. Just got a massive great 4x4 going by. So like I say, that's my video for today. Couple of things there. One thing I haven't told you about is some of the exploits that we did while we were out on Medman in Canada. And there's a story there that a lot of you will not believe whatsoever, but I can assure you it did happen, and I'll do that as a separate video later on. So I hope you're having a good day, and I will speak to you soon.